Imagine the moment you lift a cold glass of beer after a long day. The cool rush down your throat, making you believe you are rehydrating your body. Yet, in that very instant, inside you, a very different chain of biological reactions begins running at full speed because to your kidneys, this is not a refreshing drink, but an emergency signal to release water. And the paradox is that the more you drink, the drier your body becomes from the inside, not just in your mouth or throat, but deep within your cells, your muscle fibers, and your brain neurons, all of which are forced to give up their own water to maintain temporary balance. This is why a single glass of beer often leads to multiple trips to the bathroom, and what leaves your body is not only the liquid you just consumed, but also precious intracellular water, causing the brain to shrink ever so slightly, creating a vague sense of heaviness in the head and reduced focus, and while on the surface you feel relaxed, inside, your body has already shifted into emergency mode. Because the liver never sees alcohol as food, it sees it as a toxin that must be processed immediately. So all familiar metabolic pathways, like fat burning and glucose handling, are temporarily paused to make room for detoxification, as if an entire city were forced to stop normal activity to extinguish a small fire that reignites every single day. The problem is not a single evening, but repetition. Because when dehydration happens frequently, the kidneys, two silent filters beneath the ribcage, no longer perform fine regulation but are pushed into crisis management. Blood becomes thicker, filtration pressure increases, hormones that retain salt and water are activated to protect blood pressure. While alcohol continues to force water out, two opposing commands pulling against each other inside the same organ day after day, and within this tug-of-war, minerals like magnesium and potassium are easily lost, leaving behind fatigue, mild palpitations, and shakiness that many people mistakenly attribute to lack of sleep or working too hard. What few people notice is that the kidneys do more than filter blood. They constantly communicate with the brain, blood vessels, and endocrine system, so when this state of strain persists, baseline stress signals rise, the body lives in a state of quiet vigilance. Not loud, not sharply painful, just heavier mornings, slower recovery, and a kind of fatigue that is hard to name and gradually accepted as normal. The story does not end there, because each glass of beer also quietly disrupts the immune defense line, starting in the gut, where trillions of microbes live with you every day. Alcohol makes the intestinal lining less tight, allowing fragments of bacterial toxins to slip into the bloodstream, triggering low-grade chronic inflammation, not strong enough to make you acutely ill, but enough to make you more prone to colds, duller skin, and faster energy depletion, like an army forced to remain on constant alert in thick fog. And then, when that repetitive cycle stops, when 30 days pass without triggering nightly dehydration, the first thing that happens is not a miracle, but biological quiet. The kidneys return to their natural filtration rhythm, blood becomes thinner, pressure drops, cells begin absorbing water again, like dry soil receiving the first rain of the season. The brain feels lighter, mental fog fades, minerals stabilize, and the heart and muscles are no longer constantly pulled tight. The liver is no longer trapped in continuous detox mode, metabolic pathways reopen, the body can burn energy instead of storing it defensively, insulin sensitivity improves, energy comes from stability rather than stimulation, sleep becomes deeper, cortisol softens. Emotions feel less volatile, not because you are trying harder, but because your organs are finally allowed to do less emergency work. The most important thing here is not the story of quitting alcohol or not, but the moment you realize that what improves is not an upgrade to your body, but the restoration of functions that were always there, and when the body no longer has to strain itself, negotiating with a habit repeated every day, you begin to sense fatigue, stress, and cravings more clearly, no longer seeing them as weakness, but as honest biological feedback from an ancient system doing its best to protect you. And it is this awareness that creates the deepest connection between you and your body, not through force, but through listening. And there is another layer of change that is often overlooked, which is how the brain relearns what normal feels like after weeks without alcohol interfering with the nervous system. When beer is consumed daily, the brain gradually adapts to having an artificial calming agent. Dopamine spikes quickly and then drops just as fast, making natural alertness feel dull, low energy, or like you are not fully switched on. When that cycle ends, the brain needs time to recalibrate its stimulation threshold. And during this process, many people are surprised to find that their focus becomes more sustainable, not a sharp surge followed by a crash, but steady, clear, and sufficient for long periods of work without needing extra stimulation. From a biological perspective, this is when the autonomic nervous system begins to restore balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic branches, meaning the body is no longer stuck in a constant baseline fight or flight state. Resting heart rate drops slightly, blood vessels relax more naturally, and the sense of internal tension fades without you having to consciously label it. This is also why many people report deeper sleep after a few weeks, not because they sleep longer, but because the brain is no longer repeatedly micro-awakened by stress signals and alcohol-related blood sugar fluctuations. Another important point is how the body handles visceral fat. When the liver no longer has to prioritize processing ethanol, fat-burning enzymes resume their normal circadian rhythm, not to promise rapid weight loss, but to release energy at the right time and in the right amounts. Fat is no longer held defensively as an emergency reserve in an environment the body perceives as unstable. This change is slow, quiet, but durable, and it explains why many people notice their waistline gradually lightening without strict dieting or heavier training. Most importantly, after 30 days, the deepest change is not in metrics, but in the body's margin of resilience. You recover faster after a stressful day, rely less on stimulation to push through, and begin to clearly distinguish between true fatigue and habit-driven fatigue. Science refers to this as the restoration of self-regulation capacity, when physiological systems are no longer cross-wired by a repeated daily stressor. And this is the point I want you to take with you as this video comes to an end. Not to judge whether drinking is right or wrong, but to understand a very practical principle. Your body does not need you to be perfect. It only needs a calm enough signaling environment to do its work. When a disruptive signal disappears, many things naturally return to their proper place, quietly, without drama, yet sustainably. If this kind of analysis helps you see your body more clearly and stop blaming yourself for feeling tired or low on energy, subscribe to the channel so we can continue unpacking familiar habits through a clear, biology-based lens, because every subscription not only supports the channel, but also helps more people understand that health is not about forcing the body, but about learning how to send the right signals to a system that evolved to protect us long ago. Before this video comes to an end, I want you to hold on to one very straightforward truth. Not to scare you, and not to force you to change immediately, but to help you see your body through a different lens. Your body is never weak. It is simply responding precisely to the repeated signals you send it every day. When you drink beer regularly, even in familiar amounts, your body does not interpret that as relaxation. It interprets it as biological noise that needs to be managed, and most of what you feel afterward, fatigue, heaviness in the head, low energy, irritability, shallow sleep, is not because you are doing too little, but because your body is quietly compensating. What exhausts many people in this channel's audience is not alcohol itself, but the sense of helplessness that comes from trying to live healthier while the body still fails to respond as expected. You eat reasonably well, you work hard, you even try to go to bed earlier, yet you still wake up feeling heavy, still need stimulation to get going, still feel your energy slipping through your fingers. This video is not meant to criticize any habit, but to give you a fairer perspective. Many modern states of fatigue do not come from lack of effort, but from a biologically noisy environment that persists over time. When something like beer shows up every day, the body never gets the chance to return to a neutral state. The kidneys remain on alert, the liver stays in detox priority, the nervous system holds a constant baseline tension, and the immune system is slightly suppressed. There is no sharp pain, only a background fatigue that lasts long enough for you to mistake it for personality, age, or work stress. And the most dangerous part is when you begin to blame yourself, believing you lack discipline, motivation, or willpower. Biology tells a different story. Your body is doing exactly what it is designed to do: protect you in an unstable signaling environment. When that signal stops, as it does during 30 days without beer, what appears is not a miracle, but lightness. Lightness in the head, in the chest, in the mind, and in how you respond to stress. Not because you have become better, but because your body no longer has to strain itself to shield you. The most important takeaway I want you to carry after this video is this: health is not a win-lose battle with your body, but a process of signal adjustment. Every repeated habit is a message you send to your biological system. Some messages are calming, others are disruptive, and the body always responds honestly, even if we fail to recognize the language. If you are in a phase of feeling tired, disengaged, or like you are not the same anymore, I do not want you to leave this video feeling that you must immediately give something up. I want you to leave with a deeper question. How much extra work is my body doing each day just to maintain stability? And if I remove even one small source of noise, what might change? This channel exists not to issue lifestyle commands, but to help you relearn how to read your body through clear, accessible science, so you no longer blame yourself for feeling tired, low on energy, or not as optimized as others. If this kind of content resonates with your own experience, if you see yourself in these words, subscribe to the channel, not to chase trends, but to build a more grounded view of health, one where you do not have to force yourself, push harder, or stay tense, but learn how to create a biological environment calm enough for your body to do the work it evolved to do. We will continue talking about familiar habits, things that seem harmless, and how they quietly shape your energy, mood, and long-term resilience. And if you stay, what you gain is not a promise of rapid change, but clarity. Clarity to choose, clarity to let go, and clarity to live more lightly within your own body.